So at this point, we have most of the parts we're going to need for this course. We're going to be adding a few more later on in the course as we need them. But now we're going to start making some assemblies. And the first one we're going to make is a wheel assembly. I've already created a collection here, so make a collection that's called wheel in the main collection. So just right click here and then name it wheel. I'll just do it again, then I'll delete it. All right. And then we want to make a cylinder. So my cursor's at the world origin. I'm going to do Shift A and then make a cylinder. But if you remember, we set our vertices to 12. We don't want them 12 anymore. We probably want it 32. Let's make it 32. And then let's move that cylinder up past our parts. We want it to be rotated RY 90. And now we come to the point where we realize that we haven't really scaled any of these objects appropriately. Actually, let me move this cylinder this way. So we're going to scale this wheel right here. Let's go ahead and name it. I'm going to call it underscore wheel. And we'll go ahead and set it up. It's going to be a rigid body. It's going to be active. And we're going to give it some of these properties later on. Let's go ahead and make it a cylinder, collision shape, and let's start scaling it right now. So none of these objects are very well scaled. Let's scale this object so it's about roughly the scale of a typical passenger vehicle tire. And that's going to be about, so the Z direction, which is this way for the object, is going to be 0.2. That's going to be the width. And the X and Y are going to be 0.75. And this is about the size of a tire for a typical passenger vehicle. All right, which means that everything we've made so far is way too big. So I'm going to scale everything down quite a bit. And to do that, I want to scale it about the cursor here. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change my transform point, my transform pivot point to the 3D cursor. And then I'm going to select everything right here and I'm going to scale it down so that it's about that size. Let me see what that looks like. I think that's pretty good. I might scale, let me just scale this. Let me go back to Bounty Box Center and I'm going to scale the steering rack down a little bit. And I think that's pretty good. Let me just move this down. Okay. All right, now let's move our wheel up to here. All right, so what do we need for a wheel assembly? We need, as far as rigid bodies, we need a wheel and we're going to need an upright. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to move my cursor here. Cursor to selected. And then I'm going to do Shift A, cube, and I'm going to scale down a cube, move it along the x-axis so it's outside of it, scale it down a little more, and scale it up a little bit, like that. Okay, let's make it a rigid body also, and let's name it. It's going to be underscore upright. Okay. Before we add our constraints, I guess we should go ahead and add our drivers for these objects, for these rigid bodies. So first thing we need to do is add a mass factor driver. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to do mass factor, and then I want the wheel to weigh 20 times the mass factor. So we're going to do a single property mass factor, and then we're going to pick our subframe again here, and we're going to target our mass factor. Okay, and it's 1. Shouldn't have any errors, and we don't. Okay, now we can copy this driver, and we can add it to the upright. Copy driver, select the upright, and paste it. Okay. So now we have a mass factor for the upright and the wheel. The other thing we need to add is a friction driver. So let's add a driver there. We'll just call it var, that's fine. It's going to be a single property. It's going to come from our subframe. And the target property is going to be friction. That, it should be 1, and it is. Okay. There we go. All right, now we need some constraints. So the first thing we need is an axle. So let's pick our axle, and we're going to do Shift-D, move it over here, Shift-S, selection to cursor. So we have our axle. Let's go ahead and set it up. So let's pick it, and we will attach it. So somewhere I have objects, I want to attach it from the upright to the wheel, like that. And I also want to parent it to the upright. So Control-P, keep transform. All right, now we need a motor. So Shift-D, Shift-S, selection to cursor, and I'm just going to move this along the X outside of it, about right there. And I might even scale it down a little bit. It's about that size. All right, now we can change our diameter like we want it. So let's edit our driver, and instead of targeting the motor here, let's pick the wheel right there. I actually messed this up also. This should not be scale. This should be dimensions 2, like that. Okay, so, or not 2, 1. Okay, so it should be 0.75. So there we go. All right. So we have our motor. We also need to attach it. It needs to attach from our upright to our wheel. I can't see the upright. So upright, and then wheel. Okay. And we need to parent it to the upright, like that. All right, now we need both brakes. So I'm just gonna do Shift-D for both of these, then do Shift-S, selection to cursor, and let's just move them out about the Y, or the X, sorry. And there we go. All right, so we have this brake. It needs to attach from our upright to our wheel. Same thing with our parking brake, upright to the wheel. And we need to parent all of these to the upright, like that. All right, that should do it for the wheel.